Greetings, greetings, greetings. Good to see everybody today. Hope you and me too. Just got to adjust my cameras here just a slight bit right there. Let me see it. There we go. That's a little better. All right. So I did not say the best. I don't know if I say the best for last or not. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. We'll have to see. That shall be determined in the end. But in the meanwhile, I am here to give you a little smile today. Just turn it down just a little bit more. Yeah. I like that. Nice tight shots. So we've been doing a lot of stories. We were doing last week and the week before, we were working on My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, but we're changing up to this week because we got a short week after the African Liberation Day weekend, otherwise known as Memorial Day weekend. We have segued right on into some of the Black folk tales out of Julius Lester's book. And we've only got a few more of them left, and we'll be done with that book as well. But this story here, I noticed the order that he put his stories in, and this one comes near the end of the book. Right after Hi, John the Conqueror comes Stagolee, baddest man in the whole damn land. And that's how we have to say it too, because if we don't say it like that, Stagolee liable to rise right on up out the grave and come and try to, you know what I'm saying, put his foot down. So, meanwhile, back at the ranch, let's go ahead and do our little dance. Proverb for the day. A too modest man goes hungry. A too modest man goes hungry. So, in other words, ain't nothing wrong with tooting your own horn. Now, I don't know if I explained that, if that's an explanation, but it is kind of an explanation that time I did it. Okay, I don't usually do that. But a too modest man goes hungry. Well, I tell you, Stagolee is not that man. He is not a too modest man. So let's read a little bit. This is going to be a multi-part story because this is a long one. Stagolee was undoubtedly and without question the baddest nigga that ever lived. Stagolee was so bad that the flies wouldn't even fly around his head in the summertime, and snow wouldn't fall on his house in the winter. He was bad, Jim. Stagolee grew up on a plantation in Georgia, and by the time he was 2, he decided he wasn't going to spend his life picking cotton and working for white folks. And when he was 5, he left, took off down the road, his guitar on his back, a deck of cards in one pocket, and a 44 in the other. He figured that he didn't need nothing else. When the women heard him whoop the blues on the guitar, he could have whichever one he wanted. Whenever he needed money, he could play cards. And whenever somebody tried to mess with him, he had his 44. So he was ready and rocking steady. A man didn't need no more than that to get along in the world. By the time Stack was grown, his reputation had spread around the country. It got started one night in one of them honky-tonks down there in Alabama. And Stagolee caught some dude trying to deal from the bottom of the deck. Old Stack pulled out his 44 and killed him dead right there on the spot. Then he moved the dead guy over to the center of the room and used his body as a card table. Another time something similar happened. Stack pulled the body over next to him so a buddy of his, who was kind of short, would have something to sit on. Didn't take long for the word to get around that this was one bad dude. Even white folks didn't mess with Stagolee. Well, this one time Stagolee was playing cards with a dude they called Billy Lyons. Billy was one of them folk who acted like they were a little bit better than anybody else. He'd had a little education, and that stuff can really mess up your mind. Billy Lyons had what he called a scientific method. of card playing. Stagolee had the nigger method of card playing. So they got to playing, and naturally Stack was taking all of Billy Lyons' money, and Billy got mad. He got so mad, he reached over and knocked Stagolee's Stetson hat off his head and spit in it. Seriously? What did he have to do that for? He could have done almost anything else in the world, but not that. Stack pulled his 44, and Billy started copping his plea. Now, listen here, Mr. Stagolee. I ain't mean no harm. I just lost my head for a minute. I was wrong, and I apologize. Matter of fact, I'll even apologize. He reached down on the ground, picked up Stack's Stetson, brushed it off real good, and put it back on his head. I didn't mean no harm. See, that's all right. I put it back on your head. Billy was timing like a champ, but Stack wasn't smiling. Don't shoot me, please, Mr. Stagolee. I got 2 chillins and a wife to support. You understand? Stack said, well, that's all right. The Lord will take care of your chillin, and I'll take care of your wife. And with that, Stagolee blowed Billy Lyons away. Stagolee looked at the body for a minute and then went off to Billy Lyons' house. He told Mrs. Billy that her husband was dead and he was moving in. And that's just what he did too. He moved right on in. Now there was this new sheriff in town, and he had gotten the word about Stagolee. But this sheriff was a show-enough cracker. He just couldn't stand the idea of Stagolee walking around like he was free, not working, not buying war bonds, cussing out white folks. He just couldn't put up with it. So when he heard that Stagolee had shot Billy Lyons, he figured that this was his chance. Sheriff told his deputy, said, all right, men, Stagolee killed a man tonight. We got to get him. Deputies looked at him. Well, Sheriff, ain't nothing wrong with killing a man. Every now and then, said one. It's good for a man's health, added another. Well, said Sheriff, that's all right for a white man, but this is a Negro. Now, Sheriff, you got to watch how you talk about Stagolee. He's one of the leaders of the community here. You just can't come in here and start talking about one of our better citizens like that. The sheriff looked at them. Well, I declare, I believe you men are afraid of a Negro. Deputies thought it over half a second. Sheriff, let's put it this way. We have a healthy respect for Stagolee. A long time ago, we struck a bargain with him. We promised that if he'd let us alone, we'd let him alone. And everything has worked out just fine since then. Well, we're going to arrest Stagolee, Sheriff said. Get your guns, let's go. The deputies stood up, took their guns, and laid them on the shelf. Sheriff, if you want Stagolee, well, you can arrest him by yourself. And they went on out the door and over to the undertaker's parlor and told him to start making a coffin for the sheriff. When all the other white folks heard what the sheriff was going to do, they ran over to talk to him. Sheriff, you can't go around disturbing the peace. But could nobody talk no sense into him? Now, Stagolee heard that the sheriff was looking for him, and being a gentleman, Stagolee got out of bed, told Mrs. Billy he'd be back in a little while, went on down to the bar. He'd barely gotten the first drink down when the sheriff came stepping through that door. He walked over to the bartender. Barkeep, who's that man down at the other end of the bar? You know there's a law in this town against drinking after midnight. Who is he? Bartender leaned over the counter and whispered in his ear, Don't talk so loud. That's Stagolee. He drinks when he gets thirsty, and he's generally thirsty after midnight. Sheriff walked over to Stagolee. Stagolee didn't even look around. Sheriff pulled out his gun. Stack still didn't look around. Sheriff fired a couple of shots in the air. Stagolee poured himself another drink and threw it down. Finally, the sheriff said, Stagolee, I'm the sheriff and I'm white. Ain't you afraid? Stagolee turned around slowly. You may be the sheriff and you may be white, but you ain't Stagolee. Now deal with that. The sheriff couldn't even begin to figure it out, no less deal with it, so he fell back in his familiar bag. I'm placing you under arrest for the murder of Billy Lyons. You? And what army? And it better not be the U.S. Army, because I whooped them last week. Me and this army, the sheriff growled, jabbing the pistol in Stack's ribs. Before the sheriff could take another breath, Stagolee hit him upside his head, sent him flying across the room. Stagolee pulled out his gun, put 3 bullets in him, put his gun away, had another drink, and was on his way out the door before the body hit the floor. The next day, Stagolee went to both of the funerals to pay his last respects to the sheriff and to Billy Lyons. And then he settled down to living with Mrs. Billy. She really didn't mind too much. All the women knew how good looking Stack was, and he was always respectful, like to women, always had plenty of money, and generally made a good husband, as husbands go. Stagolee had one fault, though. Sometimes he drank too much. About once a month, Stagolee would buy up all the available liquor and moonshine in the county and proceed to get toe up from the flow up. The new sheriff waited until one of those nights when Stagolee was so drunk he was staggering in his sleep and he was lying flat in the bed. If Judgment Day had come, the Lord would have had to postpone it until Stagolee had sobered up. Otherwise, the Lord might have ended up getting Gabriel shot and his trumpet wrapped around his head some kind of way. When the sheriff saw Stagolee that drunk, he went out and got together the Ku Klux Klan Alumni Association, which was every white man in 4 counties. After the sheriff had assured them that Stagolee was so drunk he couldn't wake up, they broke in the house just as bad as you please. They had the lynch rope all ready and they dropped it around his neck. The minute that rope touched Stack's neck, he was wide awake and stone cold sober. When white folks saw that, they were falling over each other, getting up out of there. But Stack was cool. He was cool. He should have been. He invented it. Y'all come to hang me? The sheriff said that was so. Stagolee stood up, stretched, yawned, scratched himself a couple of times. Well, since I can't seem to get no sleep, let's go get this thing over with so I can get on back to bed. They took him out behind the jail where the gallows was built. Stagolee got up on the scaffold and the sheriff dropped the rope around his neck and tightened it. Then the hangman opened up on the trap door and there was Stack swinging 10 feet in the air, laughing as loud as you ever heard anybody laugh. They let him hang there for half an hour, and Stagolee was still laughing. Hey, man, this rope is ticklish. The white folks looked at each other and realized that Stack's neck just wouldn't crack. So they cut him down, and Stagolee went back home and went back to bed. After that, the new sheriff left Stagolee in peace like he should have done to begin with. Now, that's part 1 of this story. We're going to get to part 2 on the new day, right here at Doc Ock, noon and 9, where you can come to feel kind of fine and relax your mind, rejuvenate, regroovinate, because we're going to do it real smooth and try and keep you in a really good mood all through the rest of the day. You're just going to ride the crest of this wave. Matter of fact, I see a couple people out there I'm getting ready to wave at right now. I see you, Teresa. How you doing, girl? Hadn't heard from you in a while. And I saw her over there. Connie was there. And I see somebody else over there. I saw Sophia Bugs out there. How y'all doing? All right. So we're gonna just wrap this one up now. But we will be black tomorrow. That's right. We'll be black, not back. Because it's for whatever, backwards never. Remember that. And you heard it here first in the series burst. Please, if you're on YouTube, do not forget, subscribe below. Hit that button. If you're looking at us on Facebook, don't forget to give us a like. And then go ahead and give us a share. Show somebody out there that you really do care. Do it with a flair if you dare. Do it while you can. Because right now, we're in demand all over the land. But you could be one of the first on your block to have already had a subscription and to have given us a like and shared with your friends some original stories from African American folklore and culture. So we'll see y'all later. Peace out, without a doubt. Have a good day. Keep on doing what you do, being who you